Hey guys, welcome back to Unfiltered American Media. Caroline here, great to see you. Let's dive right in.
So something massive is about to go down at the Supreme Court because they appear ready to side with President Trump on his executive firing powers, specifically whether he has the authority to fire people working in federal independent agencies. That's a huge deal. This is one of the most significant cases the Supreme Court is expected to rule on in December. Big month coming up, and all signs are pointing to the Supreme Court siding with the Trump administration. Again, he's got a solid track record right now. Why? Because he picks cases he knows he's going to win, cases where he knows he's on the right side of the Constitution. For years, President Trump has argued that his executive powers give him the authority to fire whoever he wants in the federal government. He's the executive branch. He's the chief executive, the commander-in-chief. Now, the Supreme Court is set to either confirm that authority or, in a stunning turn of events, deny it. But I believe they're going to confirm it and verify that the founding fathers intended for that authority to be granted to the President of the United States.
Breaking news out of Washington. Eamon Javers has that for us from the White House. Eamon?
Scott, that's right. We've got a decision here from the Supreme Court on Rebecca Slaughter at the Federal Trade Commission. The Supreme Court in a 6-3 decision indicating that President Trump may continue to fire Rebecca Slaughter even as the court considers her case. They say they're going to have hearings on this in December of 2025. But for now, the president is authorized to remove Slaughter from the Federal Trade Commission. The Supreme Court is going to take this case up, though, and they are going to look at this issue of what's called Humphrey's executor. That is the precedent that sets up this idea of independent agencies. A lot of folks inside the Trump administration have been pushing to see if they can get a ruling from the Supreme Court abolishing Humphrey's executor and giving the executive branch a whole lot more control over a whole raft of independent agencies, including the Federal Trade Commission. For now, though, what the court is saying is that Slaughter can be fired while they move ahead with this case, and they go ahead and consider it in December. Scott, back over to you.
All right. Eamon,
the core issue in Trump v. Slaughter will decide whether the president can remove members of independent federal agencies without cause. This dispute started when Trump dismissed FTC Commissioner Rebecca Slaughter, and the Supreme Court temporarily allowed the firing to continue until the hearing in December. Trump's legal team is arguing he has the constitutional authority that the Constitution's executive power grants full removal authority to the President of the United States. He has the ability to do it. The administration is contending that limiting this power violates separation of powers and prevents the president from ensuring faithful execution of the laws. This is constitutional. It's sound. It makes sense. This argument rests on the unitary executive theory, which says the executive branch must remain accountable to the president. He's the head of the executive branch. How can you not have the executive branch be answerable to the boss of the executive branch? It doesn't make sense. If the Supreme Court accepts his reasoning, it would overturn long-standing precedent and grant the president sweeping new control over independent agencies, a choice that could fundamentally redefine modern administrative governance for a long, long time. Now, obviously, this sounds great for us right now if you're conservative, but you have to remember what that could mean down the road if Democrats ever regain power. Which is exactly why we have to do everything we can, legally and constitutionally, to fight tooth and nail, respectfully and passionately, against dangerous ideological mindsets like wokeism, transgenderism, all the badisms. We have to do that. If you see a problem in your community that bothers you to your core, run for office, make a change, be the change you want to see. Now, we've heard from justices like Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett, and I know the jury's out if you're conservative about Amy Coney Barrett, especially after that one time she gave Trump an absolute scowl during his inauguration day. Or it might have been when he addressed both chambers of Congress, the Senate and House, when they were all there together. It was wild. She just gave him this look and everybody was like, what was that? In any case, both of them have hinted that when a temporary ruling is issued in someone's favor, it usually indicates they're likely to prevail on the case. In this particular instance, Trump was granted temporary powers to fire and remove Rebecca Slaughter from her post. And based on what these justices have said, it seems like Trump will win again in this case. And that'll make it a permanent, final decision by the court. And it doesn't matter what any other district court says. Oh, well, we're going to do XYZ things. Nope. Supreme Court ruling, done deal. That's it.
Slaughter. President Trump tried to fire her back in March. Eamon, take it away.
Courtney, that's right. And Commissioner Slaughter, thank you for being here. I want to start with this. You are the only other official in Washington that the president is trying to fire right now. You've been fighting that since earlier this year, so you know more than anybody how Lisa Cook might be feeling today and what her legal options might be. But let's bring everybody up to speed on your case and just give us a sense of where things stand right now. Earlier this year, the president tried to fire you. That went to the courts. Tell us how that's been playing out.
Sure. So, in March of this year, the president tried to fire myself and my fellow Democratic Commissioner Alvaro Bedoya. We sued and challenged that firing. It went to a hearing in the district court. And in July, the district court issued a decision saying that the president was wrong and we were right. And in fact, that firing was illegal. So that decision came down in the evening on a Thursday night, 9 a.m. Friday morning. I was back in the building at the FTC. It was really, really great to be back. And then a couple days later, the appeals court stayed that lower court decision pending appeal. So now we are waiting for the appeals case to work its way through the courts.
So what happened to you on day one? I mean, this is sort of analogous, not exactly the same as what's happening over at the Fed today, but there are big questions right now about whether Lisa Cook is at work today, whether her devices work, whether she has access to email, whether she can get into the building at the Fed. Give us what your experience was earlier this year.
Well, my experience was that almost immediately my devices stopped working. I was told that my access to the building would be cut off. I was actually at our local elementary school when I found out I was fired, so I wasn't in the building when it happened. But I did not try to go back to the building the next day because it was very clear that the chairman of the FTC was going to enthusiastically comply with the president's attempt to fire us. And so I wouldn't be let in the building, and I didn't want to put the career staff who work there in the position of trying to navigate that. So we turned to the courts pretty quickly.
And I think that's the key distinction between your case and the Cook case that we're watching play out today, right, is that you worked for an FTC that was controlled by the Trump administration, and the person who's running the FTC enthusiastically supported the president's decision to try to fire you earlier this year. At the Fed, it's a different kettle of fish because we've got Jay Powell running the Fed. He has insisted that the Fed is independent. He's insisted that the president doesn't have any authority to fire him. And so it's now unclear what plays out going forward. Does Powell allow Cook into the building? Does he allow her access to her systems? If he does that put him more in the crosshairs of the president than he already was, if that's even possible? As you watch all that play out, what do you make of it?
Yeah, I think those are really good questions. I think it's important to note, though, that the FTC chairman in place right now is the first FTC chairman not to defend the independence of the FTC. And I was the first FTC commissioner to be fired since 1933 when FDR tried to fire a commissioner and then a unanimous Supreme Court said that it was illegal. So that decision to cede the independence was one that the FTC chairman made, not one that exists in the law. But you're right that it's interesting to see what will happen. I think an important thing to note is that the president's attempt to claim cause, as we just heard, basically allegations that he says amount to cause to fire Governor Cook, it means that if a president can fire someone for a manufactured cause, they can fire someone for no cause at all, even if there are removal protections in law in the statute. And in that sense, Lisa Cook is in a very similar position to the one that I am in.
Now, we've heard from Rebecca Slaughter's side of the story, and she's making the case that President Trump manufactured some reason to fire her. But shouldn't the president of the United States have the right to fire any executive branch employee he doesn't think is fit for the position during his term? Doesn't that make sense? It makes sense to me. You'd be able to fire anybody if you were the owner of your company, your branch. If you're the top dog, you have the ability to get rid of people. Why? Because that's just how it works. Most people would think so. And that's why Rebecca Slaughter will likely end up on the wrong side of this Supreme Court ruling. Slaughter's argument relies very heavily on the idea that independent agencies like the FTC must remain insulated and protected from direct political interference to preserve their neutrality. But doesn't that actually make them more corruptible? If there's less accountability to anyone else, the likelihood of them becoming corrupted goes way up. The Founding Fathers didn't want power centralized in one place with no checks. That's why they crafted the system the way they did. This argument that agencies need to remain neutral to protect the public interest, what a broad claim, what a vague use of that term. She claims her removal was politically motivated, but the counterpoint from Trump's legal team is rooted deeply in constitutional text and structure. The president argues he's the head of the executive branch, and the Constitution gives him the authority to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. It makes sense. If a president can't remove someone wielding executive power in the executive branch, then who actually runs the executive branch? No one. It doesn't make sense. That's at the heart of Trump v. Slaughter. The Trump administration's legal theory, often called the unitary executive theory, isn't some new invention. It's actually a pretty old argument that dates back decades and has been used by past administrations of both parties. The outcome could fundamentally shift how Washington operates in the executive branch for a long, long time. I'd almost argue forever. A ruling in Trump's favor would mean future presidents, not just him, could directly remove commissioners and agency heads who resist policy changes. That would be very powerful and a massive deal. It would also make Democrats' ongoing judicial obstruction way harder to pull off. They've been obstructing him across the board since day one of his second term. It's been rough. So this will likely become one of the most consequential Supreme Court decisions of the term. And the fact that it's happening very soon, December, guys, that's right around the corner. The Supreme Court could change a lot, and history may remember this as the case that finally redefined the balance of power between the presidency and the administrative state. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. That's my take. Let me know what you think in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts. I do read them all. Thank you so much for watching Unfiltered America Media. I'm Caroline, your host. Stay strong, stay free, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, everyone.